Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 69 days. No suspect named. No arrest made. No body found. And the FBI just confirmed this week that the DNA pulled from inside her home is so tangled with multiple people's genetic material that labs are calling it a biological puzzle, and the technology to separate it cleanly does not yet fully exist. Think about that. 69 days. The FBI, the Pima County Sheriff, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, private forensic labs, the world's best genealogists, and not one name. But here's what I need you to understand. The evidence has been pointing at two names since the night she disappeared. Not because of internet theories. Because of physical evidence, documented timelines, and a pattern so specific it is almost impossible to explain any other way. By the end of this video you are going to see exactly why those two names will not go away. And if at any point this case makes you want to see more, hit that subscribe button right now because this channel is the only place breaking this down the way it needs to be broken down. Let's start with the number that should have ended this investigation already if it pointed at one person. 41 minutes. Nancy's doorbell camera went dark at 1:47 in the morning on February 1st. Her pacemaker lost its Bluetooth connection to her phone at 2:28 a.m. That is a 41-minute window where someone was inside her house doing something to an 84-year-old woman who, in the sheriff's own words, could not walk 50 yards by herself. Professional burglars work in 5-minute windows. 10 minutes is sloppy. 20 minutes is the kind of recklessness that gets you caught. 41 minutes inside a stranger's home in the middle of the Arizona desert is not a crime. It is a production. It is someone who was comfortable, who was not rushing, who was not afraid of being interrupted because they already knew they would not be. But here is the part that makes one person almost operationally impossible. In those 41 minutes, Nancy had to be located in her bedroom, physically controlled, prepared for transport, moved through a dark hallway, taken through the front door, and loaded into a vehicle. All without alerting a single neighbor. Former FBI negotiator Chip Massey told reporters that managing an elderly hostage while simultaneously handling extraction logistics is a level of coordination a single operator simply cannot sustain. But two people split every task. One handles Nancy, one secures the environment. One walks her down the hallway, one watches the street. One loads her, one drives. The 41 minutes that make this suicidal for one person become entirely methodical for two. And the crime scene backs that up. Fox News drone footage showed smashed floodlights at the rear of Nancy's property. The doorbell camera faces the front. If one person killed the front camera while a second person destroyed the rear lighting at the same time, that is not improvised. That is a coordinated two-point entry with pre-assigned roles and pre-agreed timing. That is two people who rehearsed this before they arrived. Now here is something the mainstream coverage glossed over. The night Nancy was taken was not the beginning of this operation. It was the end of it. On January 23, 9 days before the abduction, a person was captured on a Ring camera 6.5 miles from Nancy's home, walking backward. I need you to understand why that matters. Ring cameras use passive infrared sensors. The camera sleeps until body heat wakes it up. Then the processor boots, the lens adjusts, and the Wi-Fi handshakes. That takes 1 to 2 seconds. Walk forward and those first seconds capture your face. Walk backward and by the time the lens is recording, all it sees is the back of a hoodie. The suspect on January 23 was physically hacking the camera's own lag time with his body. And when a dog barked nearby and he fled, he maintained his backward stance. He suppressed the reflex to turn toward the sound. He would rather trip than give that camera one usable frame of his face. That level of discipline comes from preparation, not instinct. 9 days later on February 1st, the same distinctive Ozark Trail backpack with reflective safety strips appeared on Nancy's actual porch. But everything had changed. He was not cautious anymore. He walked directly to the camera, no hesitation, no searching. He knew exactly where the potted plant was and used it to cover the lens. Then he tapped the camera twice, casually, rhythmically, the way you tap something you walk past every day. January 23 was the test run. When the police never showed up the next morning, he learned he was invisible. February 1 was not surveillance anymore. It was execution. For networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, independently confirmed through law enforcement sources that the suspect visited Nancy's home on multiple occasions before the night she was taken. The sheriff called it purely speculative. For networks. For independent sources. All saying the same thing. If two people alternated those visits across 3 weeks, no single person appears more than twice. Risk is halved. And information gathered at one location, like how to defeat a Ring camera by walking backward, gets transferred to the second person before their turn. That is an intelligence operation. And every intelligence operation needs an architect. The architect of this crime would need to know things about that house that you simply cannot learn from a sidewalk. Things like the fact that Nancy's Nest cameras did not have an active cloud subscription. They could detect motion and send alerts, but they were not recording continuous footage. The FBI had to partner directly with Google just to recover residual back-end data. The only people who could know those cameras were essentially props were people who had spent real time inside that house. People who helped Nancy with her technology. People who had watched those cameras for years and knew she never paid for the recording plan. The architect would also need to know that a wrought iron security gate at the front of the property could be passed without tools, because someone who was standing at that exact gate 4 hours earlier saying goodnight could make sure it stayed unlocked. And the architect would need to know that Nancy's essential daily medication was sitting on the kitchen counter, and then make the deliberate decision not to take it. Because if the plan was never actually about collecting a ransom, keeping her alive long enough to collect was never the goal either. Tommaso Cioni is 50 years old, born in Tuscany, married to Annie Guthrie since 2006. 20 years of Friday night dinners. 20 years of walking through that front gate, past those cameras, down that hallway. He teaches AP biology in Tucson. He teaches his students PCR amplification, the exact technique forensic labs use to process crime scene DNA. He teaches gel electrophoresis, the method that creates genetic profiles for CODIS. He knows what forensic technicians look for and, more critically, what they miss. On January 31, he drove Nancy home from dinner at his house and walked her to her front door at 9:50 p.m. 4 hours later the camera went dark. No publicly confirmed alibi has ever been released for Tommaso during that window. The gap between his home and Nancy's is 4 miles, 10 minutes on empty desert roads at 2 in the morning. Federal agents returned to Annie and Tommaso's home more than 5 times. They removed items in brown paper bags, the kind specifically used to preserve biological evidence. Annie's car was towed and impounded. Their septic tank was examined. You do not do any of that to people you have cleared. And for nearly a month after Nancy disappeared, while every other member of the Guthrie family was on camera begging, crying, pleading, Tommaso said nothing. Not one statement. Not one appearance beside his wife while she fell apart on Instagram. 30 days of silence from the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. Grief that big spills out of innocent people whether they want it to or not. Silence is a choice. And it is specifically the choice people make when a lawyer has explained that every word is a potential exhibit at trial. Now, the question that opened the door to a second name was height. The FBI described the suspect as 5'9" to 5'10". Online commentators widely claimed Tommaso was 6 feet tall and therefore could not be the man on the porch. That gap introduced the possibility of a second person doing the physical operation while Tommaso provided the blueprint. Dominic Evans is 48 years old, an elementary school teacher, and has been Tommaso Cioni's bandmate for 19 years. They co-founded a band called Early Black in 2007. Their debut album was titled Life Love Love Murder. Evans is approximately 5'9" with an average build, photographed publicly with a dark mustache and goatee matching the FBI description precisely. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente identified a possible marking on the suspect's right wrist in the doorbell footage. In performance videos from Early Black, investigators identified a marking on Evans' right wrist in the same location. Every single physical data point in the FBI description, height, build, facial hair, wrist marking, maps onto Dominic Evans. Evans also has felony records in Pima County for burglary, robbery, theft, and embezzlement. Burglary is unlawful entry into a structure with intent to commit a crime. The skill set those records document overlaps precisely with what happened inside Nancy's home on February 1st. And here is the detail almost no one has connected properly. Neither DNA profile from this case matched anything in CODIS, the FBI's database of 19 million known offender samples. For someone with no criminal history, that simply means they have never been arrested for a qualifying offense. But for someone with multiple felony convictions in Pima County, being absent from CODIS requires a specific explanation, one that Arizona's changing DNA collection laws and plea agreement structures could actually provide. A criminal record and no DNA in the national system. That is the forensic equivalent of a ghost. Now look at why the suspect's gear was deliberately terrible. A $20 Walmart backpack with reflective strips that glow under infrared. A cheap ski mask. A holster positioned in a way that firearms experts say no person with even 1 day of tactical training would ever wear. The whole outfit cost about $70. People defending Tommaso love this detail. They say he is too smart to look that stupid. But flip that argument completely. If you are an intelligent person planning a crime you cannot be connected to, what you fear most is a behavioral profile that points at someone educated, methodical, and disciplined. That profile narrows fast and it points at science teachers. But if you deliberately assemble the worst possible kit, the wrong holster, the reflective backpack, the strips you should have cut off, you build a character. FBI profilers describe a disorganized, impulsive offender and they stop looking at the careful educator 4 miles away. That is not stupidity. That is a costume. And 69 days in, no law enforcement agency has officially named Tommaso Cioni as a suspect. The costume is working. The ransom was $6 million in Bitcoin. Not 5 million, not 10 million. 6 million is a surgical number that says I know exactly what Savannah Guthrie earns and what she can actually access in cash. A stranger demands 50 million because strangers dream big. An insider lands on 6 because an insider has been sitting at the same dinner table for 20 years listening to conversations about money. That Bitcoin wallet has never been touched. Not once. The FBI deposited a test amount to track movement, 0 activity. If this were actually about money, someone would have moved those funds by now. The dead wallet confirms what the medication left on the counter already told us. The ransom was never meant to be collected. It was a prop. One of the ransom notes also used the phrase "the main individual." You do not describe yourself as the main individual unless there are secondary individuals beneath you. 2 words in a ransom note that may have accidentally described the entire structure of this operation. As of this morning, DNA expert CeCe Moore, the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, told News Nation that companies working with law enforcement are now building new mixture deconvolution software specifically because of this case. The technology is being created right now. When it works, each separated profile enters genealogical databases. 1 partial match to a distant relative is all investigators need. 2 profiles means 2 family trees, 2 independent chances for a hit. The evidence is not finished. It is still being built. And the Pima County Board of Supervisors has now voted unanimously to open an investigation into Sheriff Nanos' handling of the entire case, which tells you something significant about institutional confidence in how this has been managed. Every 2-person operation has a breaking point. The architect knows the operative can end everything with 1 phone call. The operative knows the architect will deny, deflect, and let him take the full weight of the prosecution alone. $1 million in reward money sits there, anonymous, waiting. Whatever held these 2 men together, 19 years of rehearsals, shared stages, an album with the word murder right there in the title, was built for music. It was not built for what happened at 1:47 in the morning inside the home of an 84-year-old woman who needed her medication and could not walk 50 yards on her own. The math is collapsing. The DNA is being separated by technology being written specifically for this case. Cell towers do not need anyone's cooperation. And whoever left their biology inside that house is running out of time. Before you go, if this video made you think, if it gave you something the mainstream coverage has not, share it right now. One share puts this in front of someone who might actually have a piece of information that matters. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it right now and hit the bell because the next video on this case goes somewhere this one does not, and you do not want to miss it when it drops. This channel exists because Nancy Guthrie deserves more than a news cycle. She deserves answers. Subscribe, share, and if you know something, anything at all, the number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward is $1 million. The reporting is completely anonymous. Bring Nancy home.